The great chamber of the Galactic Council floated in the heart of Velantris Prime, a world so old that its mountains had worn down to dust and risen again 3 times over. The chamber itself was carved from a single piece of crystal that had taken 1,000 years to grow, and its walls caught the light of 3 suns and scattered it into rainbows that danced across the faces of the most powerful beings in the known universe. 7 species sat in judgment that day. The Verlaxians, tall and dark, with skin like polished stone, and 4 eyes that saw in spectrums no other race could imagine. The Mendari beings of living crystal who had mastered the secrets of light itself. The Thesari, whose bodies flowed like water and whose minds moved faster than thought. The Kathrani, ancient creatures with too many limbs and memories that stretched back to the birth of their sun. And 3 others, each as old and as proud as the stars themselves. They had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years. They had watched younger species crawl out of the mud of their homeworlds, learn to fly, learn to reach for the stars. Some of those younger species had been welcomed into the Council's protection. Others had been judged unworthy and quietly erased from history. The Council did not explain its decisions. The Council did not apologize, and now, standing before them in a chamber built for giants, were 2 humans. Ambassador Catherine Cole was 57 years old. Her hair had gone gray at the temples. There were lines around her eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights and too many impossible decisions. She stood barely 5.5 feet tall, a speck of nothing before the towering forms of the elder species. But her brown eyes were steady, and her voice did not shake. Behind her stood Commander Daniel Price, a military man in his late 40s, with broad shoulders and hands that had seen combat. His dress uniform was crisp and perfect, every metal in place, every crease sharp enough to cut. He kept his face blank, but Catherine could feel the tension radiating off him like heat from a furnace. The supreme arbiter of the council, a Vorlaxian named Korith, leaned forward in his seat of honor. His 4 eyes focused on the human woman with an expression that might have been curiosity, or might have been the way a child looks at an insect before crushing it under their heel. "Humanity," he said, and his voice rolled through the chamber like thunder, translated instantly into every language by the ancient machines embedded in the walls. "You have been summoned to answer for your crimes against the peace and order of the Galactic Council." Catherine inclined her head slightly. She did not bow. The council had noticed. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. "Your species emerged from your homeworld barely 300 years ago," Korith continued. "In that time, you have violated no fewer than 47 council directives. You have colonized 17 worlds without authorization. You have refused to submit genetic samples to the Archive of Species. You have rejected our governance treaties. You have built warships in numbers far exceeding your authorized limit." He paused, and his voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. "And you have sent vessels into the Forbidden Zone near the galactic core? This alone is punishable by extinction." The chamber fell silent. The word hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Extinction. Council had done it before. There were empty spaces in the star maps where entire civilizations had once flourished, erased so completely that not even their names survived. Catherine Cole took a breath. She could feel the weight of billions of human lives pressing down on her shoulders. Every word she spoke in the next few minutes would determine whether her species lived or died.
"Arbiter,"
she said, and her voice carried clearly through the vast space. "Everything you have said is true. We have done all of these things." More murmurs. The Thesari delegate rippled with what might have been surprise. Species brought before the council usually groveled. They made excuses. They begged for mercy. They did not simply admit their guilt and stand there waiting. However, Catherine continued, "Before you proceed with your judgment, I have been authorized by the United Earth Coalition to deliver a message to this council." Ow. Korith's 4 eyes narrowed. "Speak, then. We will hear your words before we decide your fate." Catherine glanced at Daniel. He gave her the slightest nod, invisible to anyone who was not looking for it. "We are not here to defend ourselves," Catherine said. "We are not here to beg for mercy or to make excuses for our actions. We are here to give you a warning." A ripple of something that might have been laughter passed through the council. The Kathrani delegate made a sound like stones grinding together, his species' version of amusement. The very idea that humanity, the youngest and weakest of the star-faring races, would dare to warn the masters of the galaxy was apparently hilarious. Catherine waited for the noise to die down. Her expression did not change. In 3 standard cycles, she said, approximately 72 of your hours, force will emerge from the galactic core. A force that your species have long forgotten or chosen to forget. We call them the hollow because that is what they leave behind. Hollow space. Hollow worlds. Hollow silence where life once sang. The laughter stopped. We called them gods once, Catherine continued. 10,000 years ago, when they last walked among the stars, you called them gods and you were wrong. They are not divine. They are hungry. And they are waking up. Korath rose from his seat, all 8 feet of obsidian fury. You dare? You come before this council and speak of children's stories? The hollow are myths, fairy tales, told to frighten young ones into obedience. They are not myths. Catherine's voice cut through his anger like a knife through silk. We have proof. We have spent 60 years gathering it. We know what the hollow are, what they want, and what they will do when they finish feeding on the core worlds and turn their attention to the rest of the galaxy. She reached into her pocket and produced a small device, setting it on the floor before her. A holographic image sprang up, filling the center of the chamber with a star map. But something was wrong with the map. There were dark patches, places where stars should have been burning, but instead showed only emptiness. 27 star systems have gone dark in the last 18 months, Catherine said. No debris, no radiation, no distress calls. Just silence. The hollow are already feeding, Arbiter. They started with the systems closest to the core, the ones you abandoned long ago. But they will not stop there. The council stared at the map. For the first time in centuries, the elder species were silent. Catherine Cole looked up at them. At these ancient beings who had ruled the galaxy since before humanity had learned to use fire, and she spoke the words that would change everything. We came here to warn you. We came here to offer our help, our ships, our soldiers. We came here hoping that you would listen, that you would set aside your pride and your contempt for younger species and work with us to face this threat together. She paused. But looking at your faces now, seeing the disbelief and the anger and the wounded pride, I know that you will not listen. You will dismiss us. You will proceed with your judgment. You will try to destroy humanity for daring to speak the truth. Catherine turned toward the chamber's exit, Daniel falling into step beside her. So this is humanity's last warning to the Galactic Council, she said, her voice echoing off the crystal walls. Run while you still may. And then the humans walked out, leaving chaos in their wake. The council dismissed humanity's warning within the hour. The vote was 6-1, with only the Mandari delegate abstaining. The official record stated that the human ambassador had engaged in theatrical manipulation, designed to distract from her species' crimes. Sanctions would proceed. A fleet would be dispatched to Earth's colonies to enforce compliance. But one member of the council could not forget the look in Catherine Cole's eyes. It was not the look of someone who was bluffing. It was the look of someone who had seen something terrible and knew that no one would believe her until it was too late. Elder Sylveth of the Mandari was old beyond measure. Her crystalline body had been alive when the council was founded. When the 7 elder species had come together and declared themselves the guardians of galactic civilization, she had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched stars die, and buried deep in her ancient memory, in the parts of her mind that she had tried to forget, there were stories. Dark stories. Forbidden stories. Stories about things that lived in the space between spaces and fed on the light of living worlds. She requested a private meeting with Ambassador Cole. The meeting took place in a small room overlooking the violet oceans of Velantris Prime. The water stretched to the horizon, endless and calm, touched by the light of 3 setting suns. It was beautiful. Sylveth wondered how much longer that beauty would last. Catherine Cole sat across from her, hands folded on the table between them. She looked tired. The kind of tired that came from carrying a burden too heavy for any one person to bear. "You believe me?" Catherine said. It was not a question. Silva's form flickered, light passing through her in patterns of distress. "I remember the stories. The old stories from before the council. My people tried to destroy all records of that time, but memory is not so easily erased. We know." Catherine's voice was quiet. "We found your archive." Sylveth went very still. For a being of living crystal, stillness was significant. That archive was hidden in the deepest ice of a forgotten moon. It was supposed to be impossible to find. Humanity is good at finding things that are supposed to be impossible to find. Catherine pulled out a small data device and placed it on the table. 60 years ago, one of our exploration vessels discovered an anomaly on the fourth moon of a system we had catalogued as Kepler 442. There was a structure buried under more than a kilometer of ice. It took us 15 years to excavate it, another 20 to translate the language. But we did it. She activated the device. Holographic text scrolled through the air between them, symbols that Sylveth had not seen in 10,000 years. Her own language, as it had been spoken when her species was young and afraid and desperate. "You wrote everything down," Catherine said. "The first contact with the Hollow, the wars you fought against them, the millions of your people who died, and then the deal you made to save yourselves?" Sylva's voice was barely a whisper. It was survival. "We had no choice. You fed them the younger species." Catherine's tone was flat, without accusation, but the words struck like physical blows. The races that had just begun to reach for the stars, species that trusted you to guide them, to protect them. You gathered them together and you offered them to the Hollow like lambs to a butcher. And in exchange, the Hollow agreed to sleep. We saved the galaxy. We saved everyone who was left. You saved yourselves. You saved the species that were powerful enough to have a seat at the table. Everyone else was considered acceptable losses. Sylveth could not deny it. She had been there. She remembered the arguments, the justifications, the cold mathematics of survival. Better to sacrifice a few million than to lose everyone. Better to make a deal with monsters than to be consumed by them. They had told themselves it was necessary. They had told themselves there was no other way. And then they had buried the truth so deep that even they began to forget, began to believe their own mythology of benevolent guidance and peaceful civilization. "The deal had conditions," Catherine continued. "We found that part of the archive, too. The Hollow would sleep for 10,000 years. They would feed on the residual energy of the core worlds, the systems your council abandoned and declared forbidden. But at the end of those 10,000 years, the agreement would end. The Hollow would wake, and they would be hungry. We thought we would be ready." Sylveth's voice cracked like shattering glass. "We thought 10,000 years would be enough time to find a weapon, a defense, something that could destroy them. But the centuries passed, and we grew comfortable. We convinced ourselves that the stories were just stories. We forgot." Catherine stood and walked to the window. The 3 suns had set now, and the first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. So many stars. So many worlds. So many lives. 60 years ago, when we found your archive and understood what was coming, we tried to warn you. Catherine did not turn around. We sent messages through every diplomatic channel we could access. We begged for a meeting with the council. Do you know what response we received? Sylveth remained silent. Your predecessor called us primitive savages who had invented a fantasy to justify our defiance of council authority. He ordered a quarantine of our homeworld that lasted 10 years. 10 years, Elder. During which your ships prevented us from leaving our own solar system while the Hollow continued to sleep and the clock continued to tick. Catherine finally turned to face her. There was no anger in her expression, only a deep and weary sadness. So we stopped asking for help. We stopped trying to convince you. Instead, we prepared. We studied your archive until we understood every detail of Hollow biology, Hollow behavior, Hollow weaknesses. We built ships designed specifically to fight them. We developed weapons based on principles your own scientists had theorized, but never tested. We trained soldiers from birth for a war that most of the galaxy refused to believe was coming. She pulled out another data device and activated it. This time, the hologram showed ships. Thousands of them. Designs that Sylveth had never seen, sleek and brutal and built for a single purpose. 12,000 vessels, hidden in shipyards between the stars, in places your surveys never looked. Every one of them is equipped with weapons that can hurt the Hollow. Not kill them, not permanently. We have not found a way to do that yet. But we can slow them down. We can buy time. Why are you showing me this? Sylveth asked. Catherine deactivated the hologram. Because the Council has rejected our warning, as I knew they would. Because in 2 days, the Hollow will reach the first populated systems beyond the core, and everything will change. And because you are the only member of the Council who remembers the truth, she walked to the door, then paused. When the darkness comes, Elder, and your people begin to die, remember this conversation. Remember that humanity tried to save you. Remember that we offered alliance, and your council answered with contempt. Catherine opened the door. And when you are ready to listen, truly listen, you will know where to find us. She left Sylveth alone with the weight of 10,000 years of buried guilt and the terrible knowledge that the sins of the past were about to return. Outside the window, the stars continued to shine. But somewhere in the darkness beyond them, something ancient and hungry was stirring. Something that remembered the taste of worlds. Something that had waited long enough. The Hollow were. Waking, and the galaxy was not ready. The emergency. Session of the Galactic Council was called 18 hours after. Catherine Cole walked out of the great chamber. Elder Sylveth had demanded it, invoking rights that had not been used since the founding era. The other delegates had agreed with obvious reluctance, their contempt for the situation clear in every gesture and expression. The chamber was quieter this time. No crowds of observers, no ceremonial guards, no elaborate displays of power. Just the 7 elder species and the weight of decisions that could not be undone. Sylveth stood before them, her crystalline form catching the light and patterns of urgency. She had spent the past day pulling records from archives that had been sealed for millennia, gathering evidence that she had hoped would never be needed. What I am about to share with you, she began, is classified at the highest level of Council security. It has been hidden from public knowledge since before the Council existed in its current form. Some of you know fragments of this history. None of you know all of it. She activated a holographic display. Ancient symbols appeared, text in languages so old that even the translation systems struggled to render them. 10,000 years ago, our species were not the rulers of the galaxy. We were refugees, survivors, hiding in the outer reaches of space, while something terrible consumed everything closer to the core. The Cathroni delegate made a dismissive sound. Old myths. Stories told to frighten children, not myths. Sylveth's voice was sharp. Records. Written by my own ancestors, by the founders of the Thessari civilization, by the first Vorlaxians to achieve interstellar flight. All of our species remember the Hollow, even if we have tried to forget. She changed the display, showing images that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. Vast shapes moving through space, darker than the void between stars. Worlds crumbling into nothing. Ships dissolving into silence. The Hollow are not a species as we understand the term. They are something older, something that existed before the first stars ignited. They feed on energy, on matter, on life itself, and they are patient. They sleep for ages, and then they wake, and they feed until there is nothing left. High Commander Vorn of the Vorlaxian military stepped forward. He was an imposing figure, even among his own kind, with a chest covered in medals from 100 campaigns, and eyes that had never known the taste of defeat. Even if these creatures exist, he said, they are merely another enemy. We have faced existential threats before. We have 12,000 warships, weapons that can shatter planets, technology that the younger species cannot even imagine. If the Hollow come, we will destroy them. You cannot destroy them. Sylveth's voice was heavy with despair. Our ancestors tried. The combined military might of 100 civilizations threw everything they had at the Hollow, and it was not enough. The Hollow do not fight as we fight. They do not have weaknesses as we have weaknesses. They simply consume, and no force we have ever developed can stop them. Then how did our ancestors survive? The question came from the Thessary delegate, whose fluid form rippled with concern. Sylvith was silent for a long moment. They made a deal. The chamber went very still.
Oh.
They gathered the younger species, the ones who had just begun to reach for the stars, civilizations that trusted the elder races to guide them and protect them, and they offered those civilizations to the Hollow as payment. Vorn's expression twisted with disgust. Impossible. The Council would never agree to such an atrocity. The decision was made by our ancestors in their desperation. Millions of innocent beings died so that we might live. And in exchange, the Hollow agreed to sleep for 10,000 years. Sylva's form flickered with patterns of shame. That was the price of our survival. That is the foundation upon which our civilization was built. Before anyone could respond, a new voice cut through the tension. And now those 10,000 years are ending. Ambassador Catherine Cole stood in the entrance to the chamber, Commander Daniel Price at her side. They had not been invited to this session, but somehow they had bypassed every security measure. Several guards moved toward them, but Vorn raised a hand to hold them back. You were not summoned here. Human, Vorn growled. No. But I thought you should hear what we have to say before you make your final decision. Catherine walked forward, her footsteps echoing in the silent chamber. Elder Sylvith has told you the truth. The Hollow are real. They are waking. And in approximately 30 hours, they will reach the first Thessary border colonies. The Thessary delegate made a sound like water boiling. Our border worlds are heavily defended. If these creatures exist, we will stop them. You will not. Catherine's voice was flat. The Hollow will pass through your defenses like they are not there. They will consume your colonies. They will kill billions. And then they will move inward, toward the heart of Council space, toward Velantris Prime itself. She turned to address the full Council. Humanity has spent 60 years preparing for this moment. We have ships. We have weapons. We have soldiers who have trained their entire lives for this war. We came here to offer you an alliance. We came here to tell you that if we work together, there might be a chance. Vorn laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. Your species could not defeat a single Vorlaxian battle group. You think you can stand against the Hollow? We think we can hurt them. Catherine met his gaze without flinching. We think we can slow them down by time for evacuation and regrouping. We think that if every species in the galaxy fights together, with everything we have, there is a possibility of survival. Not victory. Survival. And what do you want in return for this alliance? The question came from the Kathrani delegate, suspicion dripping from every word. Catherine smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Recognition. Equality. A seat at the table where decisions are made. No more being treated as primitives. No more being quarantined and isolated and dismissed. Vorn stepped forward, looming over the human woman. You would use this crisis to blackmail us? To force the Council to accept your species as equals? I would use this crisis to save as many lives as possible, including yours. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then Vorn turned to address the Council. I recommend we reject the human proposal. Their claims are exaggerated at best, fabricated at worst. We will deal with any threat ourselves, as we have always done. And when we have proven the Hollow to be nothing more than a fiction, we will proceed with sanctions against humanity for their defiance. The vote was called 5-2 in favor of rejection. Only the Mendari and the Thessari voted to consider the alliance. Catherine nodded slowly, as if she had expected nothing else. Very well. Then humanity withdraws from Council space. We will take our fleet and our people, and we will go beyond the galactic rim, 2 places your ships have never explored. When the Hollow come for you, and they will, you will face them alone. She turned to leave, then paused. But because we are not the monsters you think we are, we will leave the door open. When your arrogance has cost you everything, when your worlds are burning and your people are dying, send a signal on the old frequencies. We will hear it. And if there are any of you left to save, we will come. Catherine Cole walked out of the council chamber for the second and final time. Behind her, the elder species began to argue among themselves, already convincing each other that the humans were bluffing, that there was nothing to fear, that they were still the masters of the galaxy. In 30 hours, they would learn otherwise. The border world of Mindith 4 was home to 3 billion Thasari souls. It was a beautiful planet, covered in vast oceans and floating cities that drifted on currents of warm air. The Thasari had lived there for 2,000 years, raising their young in the peaceful waters, growing their culture in the gentle embrace of twin moons. The planet had orbital defense platforms, 12 of them, each capable of destroying a small fleet. It had a permanent garrison of 50,000 soldiers, the finest warriors the Thessary Empire could produce. It had early warning systems that could detect a ship entering the system from light, years away. None of it mattered. The hollow came not as ships, but as absence. The early warning systems detected nothing because there was nothing to detect. One moment the stars burned bright in the sky above Mindith 4. The next moment, several of those stars simply vanished. Swallowed by darkness that spread like ink in water, Commander Lissa Ven was stationed on orbital platform 7 when the first reports came in. She was young for her rank, barely 30 years old, with the flowing form common to all the Saurian eyes that had never known true fear. She had trained for every conceivable threat, had run simulations of enemy attacks from every known species in the galaxy. She had not trained for this, Commander. We are receiving reports of visual anomalies in Sector 12. Her tactical officer's voice was calm, professional. Multiple stars appear to have been occluded. Occluded by what? Unknown, Commander. There is no mass detected. No energy signature. Simply darkness. Lissa moved to the observation window. The view should have shown the distant glow of the galactic core, a river of light that painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Instead, there was a shadow where no shadow should be, a patch of pure black that seemed to drink in the surrounding light. And it was growing. Sound general quarters. All weapon stations to full alert. Lissa's voice did not waver, but somewhere deep inside her, something ancient and primal began to whisper that they were all going to die. The next 3 hours were a masterclass in futility. The orbital platforms opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams that could slice through battleship armor. Missiles carrying warheads designed to crack planetary crusts. Gravitational distortion weapons that could tear apart the fabric of space itself. The darkness swallowed it all. There was no impact, no resistance, no reaction of any kind. The weapons simply ceased to exist the moment they touched the spreading void. And still the darkness grew. Creeping closer to Mindith 4 with the patience of something that had all the time in the universe, Lissa ordered evacuation. Ships fled the planet, carrying as many civilians as they could hold. For a brief moment, it seemed like they might escape. Then the hollow touched the first transport. The ship did not explode. It did not break apart. It simply faded, like a dream upon waking, its outline growing dim and then disappearing entirely. The screams of its passengers cut off mid-transmission. 1,000 lives ended in the space between heartbeats. The evacuation became a rout. Ships scattered in every direction, fleeing blindly into the void. Some escaped. Most did not. Lissa stayed at her post on orbital platform 7, watching the darkness descend upon the world she had sworn to protect. The floating cities of Mindith 4 went silent one by one. The oceans, so vast and beautiful, became pools of absolute black. The twin moons lost their glow and vanished. Her last transmission was received by a Thasari listening post 3 light years away. This is Commander Lissa Ven of Orbital Platform 7. The human warning was true. The hollow are real. They cannot be fought. They cannot be stopped. Tell the Council. Tell everyone. Run while you still may, then silence. Mindith 4 was gone. not destroyed, gone, as if it had never existed. The news reached the Galactic Council 12 hours later. The Supreme Arbiter Korath convened an emergency session, his four eyes dim with an emotion that might have been fear. The chamber that had echoed with arrogance just days before was now heavy with dread. The Thesari border colonies have been lost, Korath announced. 17 planets, 40 billion casualties. The reports are consistent. The enemy cannot be detected, cannot be engaged, cannot be stopped. High Commander Vorn rose to his feet. His voice was steady, but his posture lacked its usual confidence. We will mobilize the full Vorlaxian fleet. 12,000 warships, the greatest military force ever assembled in the history of the galaxy. We will meet this threat and we will destroy it. Elder Sylveth spoke from her seat. The humans warned us. We did not listen. Humans are cowards who fled rather than fight. Vorn's voice carried contempt, but it rang hollow now. We are not cowards. We will face this enemy head-on. The Vorlaxian fleet departed 3 days later. It was a magnificent sight, a river of steel and fire flowing through space toward the advancing darkness. Vorn himself commanded from the flagship, a vessel so massive that it had its own gravity. The battle lasted 3 days. On the first day, the Vorlaxians deployed planet cracker bombs, weapons designed to shatter worlds to rubble. The void absorbed them without effect. On the second day, they attempted to create a gravitational barrier using synchronized singularity generators, hoping to trap the hollow in a cage of warped space. The void passed through the barrier as if it were not there. On the third day, with half his fleet already gone, Vorn ordered a retreat. His ships fled in all directions, engines burning at maximum power. Desperate to escape the reaching darkness, 2,000 vessels made it out. Vorn's flagship was not among them. His final transmission was received by the surviving ships. All units retreat to Council space. Do not engage. Do not fight. Run. Run while you still may. And then the Supreme Commander of the Vorlaxian military vanished into the void, along with 10,000 ships and 1,000,000 souls. The council chamber was silent when the news arrived. Korath stared at the tactical display, watching the darkness spread across the map like a disease. Systems that had been thriving civilizations for thousands of years blinked out one by one.
Oh.
Is there no weapon that can harm them? Someone asked. Nothing we possess. Sylvis's voice was hollow. Nothing our ancestors possessed. The hollow exists outside the rules that govern our universe. They are hunger given form, emptiness given purpose. Before anyone could respond, a transmission cut through all channels. Overriding every security protocol the Council had ever developed, Ambassador Catherine Cole's face appeared on every screen, her expression unreadable. Council members. We have been monitoring your situation. Korath leaned forward. You said you would come if we called. We did. But our offer of alliance has passed. You had your chance to stand beside us, and you chose arrogance instead. Catherine paused. However, we are not without mercy. What do you propose? Evacuation. We have established corridors leading beyond the galactic rim. 2 regions of space the Hollow have not yet touched. We will accept refugees, civilians, anyone who wishes to flee. The cost. Catherine's eyes hardened. The Council is dissolved. Your authority ends today. All species will be equal in whatever civilization rises from this ashes. No elder species, no lesser species. Just survivors working together. Protests erupted. The Kathrani delegate slammed his limbs against his podium. You would use this disaster to humiliate us. I am trying to save what remains of your people. Catherine's voice was cold. Take the offer or do not, but decide quickly. The Hollow will reach Velantris Prime in 48 hours. After that, there will be nothing left to save. The transmission ended. The Council sat in stunned silence. The Masters of the Galaxy brought low in less than a week. Their fleets destroyed. Their worlds consumed. Their pride turned to ash in their mouths. Korath was the first to speak. What choice do we have? And so began the evacuation, the greatest exodus in galactic history. Billions of beings fleeing toward the unknown. Guided by the species they had once dismissed as primitives, humanity had given its warning. Now it was time to save what could be saved. The evacuation was chaos given form. Billions of beings fled toward the corridors humanity had established. Desperate rivers of refugees in vessels of every size and shape. Passenger liners packed beyond capacity. Cargo ships converted into transports. Private yachts carrying families. Who had never imagined they would need to run from anything? Human ships guided them through the darkness. Their navigation systems cutting paths through space that Council technology could not follow. Human soldiers held defensive positions against the advancing void, buying precious hours with their lives so that others might escape. Commander Daniel Price stood on the bridge of the carrier, Endurance, watching the tactical display as another star system winked out of existence. He had not slept in 3 days. None of his crew had. There would be time for rest later, or there would not be time for anything at all. Lieutenant Maria Santos monitored the refugee frequencies from her station. "Sir, we have a convoy of Mindari transports requesting emergency escort. They are carrying archive personnel and historical records." Daniel rubbed his eyes, trying to focus. "And Maria, make sure Elder Sylveth is with that convoy. She has proven herself an ally." "She refused special treatment, sir. Said she would take her chances with the civilian transports." Despite everything, Daniel felt a ghost of a smile cross his face. Of course she did. Keep an eye on her anyway. The Endurance shuddered as a wave of spatial distortion passed nearby. The Hollow were close, closer than they should have been. The void was not just spreading now. It was hunting. "All ahead full," Daniel ordered. "Take us to the convoy. We are getting those people out." On the observation deck of the Endurance, Ambassador Catherine Cole stood alone, watching the stars disappear. She had spent 30 years preparing for this moment. And now that it had arrived, she felt only exhaustion and a strange kind of peace. She had done everything she could. Humanity had done everything it could. The rest was out of their hands. A door opened behind her. The sound of crystalline footsteps announced Elder Sylveth before she spoke. "Ambassador, I wanted to thank you. And to apologize." Catherine did not turn from the window. "For what?" "For everything. For the arrogance of my species. For the crimes we buried. For not listening when there was still time. The apology is not for me. It is for the billions who died because your council refused to see the truth." Yes. Sylva's voice was heavy with grief. "I know." They stood in silence as another star vanished from the sky. The void was beautiful in its way, Catherine thought. Terrible and beautiful, like a storm or a wildfire or any other force of nature that cared nothing for the lives it consumed. "Do you think we can survive this?" Sylveth asked. "Truly survive?" Catherine finally turned to face her. In the dim light of the observation deck, her face showed every one of her 57 years. But her eyes were still steady, still burning with the quiet fire that had carried her through 3 decades. Of preparation and a lifetime of being underestimated, I do not know. The Hollow are ancient beyond our understanding. They are patient beyond our comprehension. Even if we escape beyond the rim, they will follow eventually. They have nothing but time. Then what hope is there? Time is what we are buying. Not victory. Not safety. Just time. Catherine walked to stand beside the Elder Mindari, both of them looking out at the dying galaxy. Generations, maybe centuries. Time to learn. Time to grow. Time to find a way to fight back. 300 years ago, your species had barely left your homeworld. Now you are saving the remnants of civilizations that once looked down on you as primitives. Catherine smiled, and there was genuine warmth in it this time. "We are not special, Elder. We are not chosen or blessed or superior. We are simply desperate, and desperation makes for effective motivation. There is more to it than that, perhaps." Catherine's smile faded. Perhaps we never forgot what it felt like to be small. To be afraid? To face darkness without knowing if dawn would come? Your people grew comfortable over the millennia. You forgot the terror of being hunted, the urgency of survival. We never had that luxury. We have been fighting for our existence since we first climbed down from the trees. The ship's intercom crackled to life. Daniel's voice came through, tired but determined. Ambassador, we are approaching the final corridor. All refugee convoys have made the transit. We are the last ship in Council space. Catherine took one last look at the stars. Somewhere out there, the world of her birth was already gone, swallowed by the void. Earth, the blue marble that had nurtured humanity through its infancy. Lost forever. She felt the grief, acknowledged it, and set it aside. There would be time to mourn later. If there was a later. Understood, Commander. Take us through. Endurance's drives engaged. And reality twisted around the ship as it leaped into the corridor that would carry it beyond the galactic rim. Behind them, the hollow consumed the last light of the old galaxy. Patient and eternal. But ahead, in the vast darkness beyond the known stars, new lights were kindling. Human stations and outposts built in the decades of secret preparation. Refugee camps that were already being transformed into permanent settlements. The seeds of a new civilization, scattered across the void. The Endurance emerged from the corridor into a region of space that no council map had ever charted. Thousands of ships filled the view, organized into convoys and clusters. Their running lights creating a constellation that had never existed before. Maria Santos looked up from her console. Sir Ambassador, we are receiving hails from the refugee fleet. They want to know what happens now. Daniel and Catherine exchanged glances. What happened now? They had saved perhaps 1 billion beings from the hollow, a fraction of the galaxy's former population. They had ships without homeworlds, families without futures, and an enemy that would eventually find them no matter how far they ran. Catherine walked to the communication station. Open a channel. All frequencies. The channel opened. Thousands of beings across hundreds of ships waited for her words. This is Ambassador Catherine Cole of the United Earth Coalition. For those who do not know me, I was the one who tried to warn the Council. For what it is worth, I wish I had been wrong. She paused, gathering her thoughts. We have lost much. Our homes. Our history. The stars that guided our ancestors. The Hollow have taken everything we built over thousands of years, and they will not stop. They will follow us. They will hunt us. And one day they will find us again. Now, the silence across the fleet was absolute. But we are not dead yet. We have ships. We have knowledge. We have each other. And we have something the Hollow can never understand or consume. The will to survive. Catherine's voice grew stronger.
Yeah.
The old order is gone. The council that failed us is dissolved. In its place, we will build something new. Something where every species has a voice. Something where the mistakes of the past cannot be repeated. It will not be easy. It will take generations. But if we work together, if we learn from what we have lost, we will not just survive. We will grow. We will become stronger. And when the time comes, we will go back.
Ow.
Sylvith stepped forward to stand beside her. The Mindari stand with humanity. We owe them our lives, and we will honor that debt. Across the fleet, other voices began to join in. This Ari survivors. Vorlaxian remnants. Even a few Cathroni, humbled at last by the magnitude of their loss. Catherine smiled, a tired but genuine expression. This is not the end. This is just the long night, the darkness before dawn. Humanity has survived long nights before, and we have never stopped fighting for the morning. She deactivated the channel and turned to Daniel. Commander, set a course for the nearest suitable system. We have a civilization to build. Daniel nodded, something like hope flickering in his exhausted eyes. Yes, Ambassador. The Endurance moved forward, leading the refugee fleet into the unknown. Behind them, the old galaxy burned and died. Consumed by the ancient hunger of the Hollow, but in the darkness ahead, humanity was already planning, already building, already preparing for the war to come. They had given their warning. They had saved who they could. And now, in the spaces between the stars where no light had ever shone, they would forge a new future from the ashes of the old. The Hollow had won the first battle. But the war was far from over, and humanity was just getting started.